Grinch, Dante, and Wylie? If not now, when? Seems like the next logical domino to fall.
Well, Gixer, you're making my heart go pitter patter. And there is a certain pain attached to your point because, yeah, doubling down on Bennie Wylie and keeping him around certainly carries the same width, and it resembles the same pattern of, well, I'm gonna stay with my guy for one more year. It certainly has that kind of feel and flavor. And so, like, if I was making the decisions and having said everything that I've said already about, Lincoln Riley just wasted our time over the past 11 months by retaining Alex Grinch, retaining Dante Williams, instead of, doing this house cleaning now in December, which he should have done this past January. Retaining Bennie Wylie feels very much the same way. And I hope I get to be proven wrong by Bennie Wylie. That would be great, because that would mean that USC is going to have a very good 2024 season. It's going to have a very good 2024 offensive line. And I think in many ways, the reminder about Bennie Wylie, Gixer, and everyone else watching here at the Voice of College Football, the key reminder about Bennie Wylie is that it wasn't just a defensive problem, right? The offensive line regressed relative to 2022. And in many ways, and I've said this before on recent shows with Mark and Tim, that to me, the offensive line is the centerpiece of USC in 2024 for sure. And really, it's going to be the determinant of how successful this program is. Because when you think about it, first off, you're bringing in Will Howard, not the best of the best at quarterback. You're bringing in a guy who comes from Kansas State, where, he wasn't supposed to be the hero. He's not going to be the hero now, so and there's a certain continuity in terms of, what you ask from Will Howard compared to what you ask of Caleb Williams. So, like, Lincoln Riley's already making that adjustment in terms of, again, not putting everything on the quarterback. So that puts a lot more on the offensive line. Tim and I have had this conversation. Would you rather have the elite quarterback and the decent offensive line, or would you rather have the solid quarterback but the elite offensive line? And Lincoln Riley seems to be setting up his roster for 2024 such that we don't have to have a spectacular quarterback, but we do need to have that offensive line being better. And so to draw it back to Bennie Wylie, again, it wasn't just the defensive side of the ball, it was also the offensive line regression. And so how this offensive line performs, can this offensive line be powerful and dominant and nasty? That in many ways is going to be the whole ball game, because you're losing Damani Jackson, you're losing Tackett Curtis, you're losing some of these defensive pieces in the portal. If your offensive line can road grade, if your offensive line can dominate, you minimize whatever instability and limitations you have on the defensive side of the ball because of these portal defections and because of the transition that you're having on the defensive side of the ball this season. So in many ways, the track record and the performance of Bennie Wylie at USC in 2024, it really is going to focus on that offensive line. Not that the defensive line won't be significantly important as well, but in many ways, that offensive line is important because the Bennie Wylie factor and how Bennie Wylie related to and with Alex Grinch, it wasn't just defense. There was also an offensive component. That's why I was so critical of Bennie Wylie. So the offensive line is going to be the prism through which Bennie Wylie's performance is going to be judged this season, Gixer.
And so this is where I guess why maybe Gixer asked a question of Matt. This is where Matt and I disagree all the time because, I think, has Bennie Wylie proven anything? No, I don't think he has. But remember, you guys, he's going to, whatever these coaches want and the players, they're going to tell the strength team, hey, this is what we want you guys doing. This is how he wants these players. We want them at this way, whatever. Grinch told him, hey, this is how I want the players. and he gave it to them. And he flat out came out and said at the beginning of this year, they got him out there in front of the cameras really early on to say, hey, I'm gonna put the guys what they want. And coach tells me they want to get bigger. We're getting bigger. It's not the medium 10, it's the big 10. We're getting bigger. He says they're going to eat, they're going to lift, and they're not going to have a choice. And as far as on the defensive side, was it Bennie Wylie and the strength program, or was it the fact we were asking undersized linemen to go up against gigantic offensive lines at Oregon, at Notre Dame, at Washington? Was it the strength and conditioning program, or was it the players? And I'm not blaming the players. I mean, if you're 6'2", God made you 6'2", and your frame, you probably should be carrying about 280 pounds. That's who you are. If you're a linebacker being asked to play a tackle, that's not your fault. That's a problem within. That's not your issue or Bennie Wylie's issue. And on the offensive line, I think the issue of the offensive line wasn't the strength or nastiness thing. It was communication, and it was there were some line calls. There were some missed assignments and free runners, and that's where I think we struggle on offensive line. I think when they pinned their ears back and they were blocking, Matt, our run game was pretty effective at times. And part of that was that the offensive line guys that, offensive lines love to run block. They get out there, they get nasty. And I think they had that nastiness, but it was more the communication along the line. So for me, I'm still wait and see on Bennie Wylie. He hasn't shown me anything, but he hasn't shown me anything that I'm worried about either. And like you said, this year he'll have a lot to prove.
Which brings us to the loss of Michael Tarquin. How big a loss is that?
He struggled, and they're shuffling around the right side of that line the entire year. It just didn't seem to gel on that right side whatsoever. They kicked Kingston out to right tackle, in place of Tarquin. And I think towards the end of the year, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, Tarquin found himself on the bench. Is that right?
Yeah. So
I'm not sure how much that's going to be. Remember, we're going to have a bunch of really hungry. There's sophomore, there's their second year, those freshmen, the redshirt freshmen that are coming out. That I've been I'll keep on saying how happy and excited I am to see these guys. But we're going to see a lot of that 2023 class getting some serious looks this year. Probably going to see it in the Holiday Bowl because it doesn't count against it won't count against their eligibility in their redshirt year. So look for some of these young guys. They are big. They are thick. Talk about size and strength. These are the guys we're talking about. These are Big Ten quality size linemen. And they've been playing not on the first team, but this team as a unit's been playing together. So we might see some cohesiveness as they practice all year together. We had another. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say we have this. If you want to add to what I just said, go ahead.
So, what you've said, Tim, about the offensive line, that leads to another really important conversation to have at USC, and that is the Josh Henson conversation. And I would say that, if forced to choose between Bennie Wylie and Josh Henson in terms of, which guy should be more on the hot seat in 2024, I'd go with Bennie Wylie first, but that doesn't exempt Josh Henson from scrutiny. And, as we come up on the early signing period, we need to mention that, Josh Henson, first off, to be fair, he is still trying to dig out of the Clay Helton era, and that's not an instant thing. All right. And we can give Josh Henson the benefit of the doubt to that extent. But at some point in the not too distant future, Josh Henson needs to be landing 5-star offensive linemen at USC. The program's drought in that regard, the difficulty this program has had over the past several years in landing 5-star offensive linemen, mostly a Clay Helton problem. Again, this is not mostly a Lincoln Riley thing. It's still a Clay Helton thing. USC is still playing catch up in this regard. But nevertheless, if you are Josh Henson and if you're USC, you need to start landing the really big fish, the biggest fish in the portal.
Yeah. Now he did
on the recruiting trail. So Josh Henson has a lot to prove in 2024, and he should certainly be I'm willing to ride with him for another year, but he should definitely be coaching for his job this year.
They have the 24 class. They have the number 1 interior offensive line in Jason Sandamela. And I think is it Henson's issue or is it the NIL issue? Because those elite tackles are coming at a very heavy price tag. And if it is the fact that this is hearsay, no one's really come out and said this because the team's not supposed to dictate NIL. We know it's all circular, but we've seen it where we've had tackles, and they go up at 11th hour to Nike U and they get a nice presentation, and at the 11th hour decide to flip over to Oregon. Connerly would have been a huge asset. Then you could put Monheim at right tackle. We're probably a whole different season, I'm sure. At least 1 or 2 more wins if we had Connerly at left tackle, slide, I think, and then you slide Monheim over to right tackle. That solves a lot of problems on our offensive line, I think. I don't know if that's a Henson issue in recruiting and not landing those guys, or if it's what we're doing as far as our NIL policy. And that's something that can't be talked about in public because it's not supposed to happen.